and structures for further engagements and debate to promote this important dialogue. The Indaba is an important avenue for the harmonization of relationship with communities, other sectors, and government, including those who don't believe on this sector, on the relevance of this sector. We must engage them, and we think this Indaba Accord has that platform. Certainly, as we mark Africa Month and seek to encourage and affirm the significance of the different cultures within our country, this Indaba stimulates both nation building and social cohesion. Your Majesties, the centrality of the Constitution in a democratic South Africa is paramount. It is the sweet fruit of generations of struggle that many of our forebears have paid the ultimate price for. And majority of those, of course, struggles were led by traditional leaders. We think it's important that we must emphasize on that point. As we strive to affirm the institution of traditional leadership in a democratic South Africa, this Indaba inter alia will assist us in addressing the issue of cultural practices that threaten the legislative rights of individuals and communities. The role of traditional leaders in the clarion call for radical socio-economic transformation, especially on matters related to land, will also deserve further contemplation and deliberation by this Indaba. We hope that this and other issues will be clarified at the end of the Indaba. Distinguished guests, that the institution of traditional leadership is now well recognized in a democratic South Africa is in no small way due to the leadership of our current president, President Zuma. Since his inauguration in 2009, he has ensured that the role of traditional leaders has been affirmed. Most importantly, the department has just recently tabled the traditional and Khoisan leadership in Parliament to give effect to the recognition of the Khoisan leaders, structures, and their respective communities. This proposed legislation will be a milestone in the history of the Republic, since it will allow for statutory recognition and participation in the establishment structures and institutions that interface with government. This will complete the call for unity in diversity and nation building. We are therefore delighted that the Khoisan leadership is represented in this important Indaba. This has been the hallmark of our president's leadership, struggling for the downtrodden, the voiceless, and the overlooked. He joined the African National Congress in 1959 at an early age of 17 years. At the age of 21, he was incarcerated in Robben Island, sentenced to 10 years for conspiring to overthrow the evil system of the apartheid government. These are some of the sacrifices made by our president. It is these experiences that have guided his actions. It is no wonder that his role in guiding our country has ensured that service delivery has improved to millions of our citizens. He has made it his life duty to struggle for the poorest of the poor. He is a hero of the masses, those voiceless citizens who don't have access to Facebook or Twitter. Of course, we know very well that he's not a friend, to monopoly capital. We know very well that he's shaking the monopoly capital. His leadership has changed the lives of the poor, of the poorest, has ensured that they have running water, they have home to walk into for the first time, that they cook with electricity, that they drink water from a tap and not a river with animals. After years of denials and academic debate on whether HIV causes AIDS or not, it is under his capable leadership that we saw antiretroviral medication rollout to millions of HIV-infected citizens, ensuring that more lives were saved. Ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee you, when real history is told, not the distorted history that is peddled today in the public discourse, this is the president who will be remembered for bringing hope to millions of our citizens. Honorable leaders, please join me as I present to you the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency, President Jacob Zuma.
Thank you very much, Director of the program. Oh, that's better. No, yeah, fine. Honorable Minister of Culture, Baba van Rooyen, and all ministers present here today, and deputy ministers, chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, Khosi Maubani, and all our traditional leaders, Your Majesties, our kings, leaders of the political parties present here, our public protector from the Chapter 9 institutions, chairpersons of the provincial houses of traditional leaders, president of Contralesa, Khosi Setlamo Raho Tobojani, chairperson of the NKC, Mr. Cecil Lefleur, chairperson of Salga, Councillor Pax Tau, all distinguished guests from different institutions who are with us here this morning, fellow South Africans, Sanbonani, Dumelang, Tobela, Abshe, Ndimasholoni, Molweni, Lojan, Rovua. Your Excellencies, I take this opportunity to greet you all on this important occasion of the inaugural Indaba of Indigenous and traditional leaders. This is a very important step in the life of our constitutional democracy. Because we need to cross all the T's and dot all the I's so that our system is complete. You have gathered as traditional leaders to discuss critical issues that will contribute to moving our country forward. This Indaba is held during the year of our stalwart, the revolutionary Isitwalandwe Siaparakwe, and freedom fighter, our beloved President Oliver Reginald Tambo, who would have reached a century this year had he lived. The Indaba also occurs during Africa Month. On Thursday, last week, we celebrated Africa Day. Speaking at an Africa Day interview on Radio Freedom on the 25th May, 1980, our former President Tambo said the following, and I quote, "The black man is in South Africa, lives in a mini world where his highest political achievement under that system is participation and perhaps being elected in Bantu community councils, elections in Bantu townships, or Bantustan elections in purely tribal settings, and in the world of our colored councils, Indian councils, and Chinese community councils, all of them the creation of a supreme, superior, and almighty whites-only parliament," unquote. As a country, we have traversed a long road from this reality. Today, we have a government that is inclusive and representative of all sectors of our society. The institution of traditional leadership is now enshrined in the Constitution of our country. The time that President Oliver Tambo refers to, it was not in any constitution. Now it is enshrined in our constitution and is one of the key achievements of our multicultural society and democracy. In this regard, the democratic South Africa recognizes the important place of our traditional leaders in the lives of many of our communities. I think this point needs to be understood and underlined, that the institution is not a newcomer. There were all efforts by colonialists to erase it. They couldn't. It fought to defend everything we had, from political power, economic power, our traditions, our dignity, our everything. It led its people. But there was an effort to erase it from our minds and everything. It was undermined. And therefore it is important that we make the point the traditional institutions. That was our government. That was our system. That was our way of life. That was deprived from us. In some cases, changed to look different. So we are saying, this time around, it is recognized, it is enshrined in our Constitution. What we are meeting here to do is to discuss the necessary, probably, technical points and constitutional points so that there is harmony, so that the system operates properly, covering everyone. It is therefore an important gathering that we are inaugurating today. It's an opportunity you need to utilize and utilize it properly, taking advantage of this. Bring our wisdom to shape our system. This is what we are here to do. We need to listen to others and appreciate their contributions and make our contribution positively to help us shape our system of democracy in our country. Chairperson and delegates, this Indaba takes place during the election year of all structures of traditional leadership. It will set the tone for the next 5 years of the term of office of all structures of traditional leaders. We appreciate the contribution of all those who were in office for the past 5 years. The Indaba will consider critical issues affecting our people and our country, taking forward the work that has been done in the past 5 years and looking ahead to the future. As traditional leaders, we know that the economic well-being of our people is important to you. The challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality continues to afflict us. The important questions we need to ask ourselves, why it is afflicting us only? If you talk about poverty in our country, it's not generalized, it's very specific to us. Why? How could we address that challenge, all of us together? The global economy remains stagnant, and our own country faces the problem of slow growth. We face the challenge of slow economic transformation, regardless of progress made in the past few years. Black people are still left behind with regards to the ownership and control of the economy. That matter cannot be the matter of other people and not us, traditional leaders. It is in this view that we speak about radical socio-economic transformation. Amongst projects that we have placed on the table is the enhanced support to small businesses and smallholder farmers. Government also wants to see a revival of township and rural enterprises, and more support will be provided to the two sectors. Government is keen to engage traditional leaders on the radical socio-economic program and its implementation in rural areas in particular. We'll also discuss economic matters that are close to the institution of traditional leadership, such as land redistribution. The economic liberation of our people is fundamentally based on land redistribution rather, and ownership, and we cannot compromise on this. I had advised leaders, the traditional leaders, that they must appoint attorneys to handle the issues of land. And they indicated that the National House was engaging the Black Lawyers Association to assist in this. Equally, it is the duty of our people to lodge land claims, but only where they have proof, not the whole of South Africa. Traditional leaders can be very helpful in this regard because their predecessors and forefathers fought land wars. What is discouraging is that over 90% of claims are currently settled through financial compensation. This practice perpetuates the dispossession that we are trying to solve. We urge those who obtain land to utilize it and not resell it. This point is very important, Your Excellencies, Bondabezita, Nobaed. What made us poor and poverty-stricken was the dispossession of land. When you get it, you can't sell it. It means you don't understand Ifa, the heritage. Because once you have the land, you have what it takes to live. We have admitted the fact as government that by creating the options to our people, that you can, when the government says, here is your land, you can choose to stay in it and use it, or money. because money in Pande Esono is the root of all evils. People choose money. Now, if we are a community, even if the money sounds in millions, by the time it is distributed, it is just a few thousand rands. And you remain poor when you had an opportunity to get out of poverty. We need to be one on that one. If I were to do what I think is right, I would say the land that is brought back, those who are regaining have no right to sell it. If anything, they should have a right to be assisted by government to develop the land, make it productive, so that they can live generations to come. We should not miss that point. And I think traditional leaders should actually take a resolution on that matter, together with government. You can't claim the land and get it and continue in poverty when the land is there. So it's an important point. That's precisely the reason why we made this point to traditional leaders, that let us not do what happened when we were being dispossessed, where different communities were deprived of their land. As an individual community, once they finish with one, they move to the next. And once they finish with the next, they move to the other. Because we're not united. The reason we say we need to have one common legal firm so that our approach should be the same. And you should not have poor communities failing to do the right thing because they are poor. When your organization, before other organizations emerged, when it was still one, it said, let us stop animosity among ourselves. Let us unite so that we can defend our rights, our land, our everything. That's what we need to do even now. That's why the issue of the legal firm is absolutely important. Because even if we don't have money, we can sell few of our cattle and be able to pay. If we are together, we put together in one bag, we could have a purse which could have millions. Unlike if it is just one community, we should have no money. It's a point we need to think very seriously and work together. I know that because we are us, we are in the world, we form many parties and therefore separate our strength into many, many kind of things instead of one. I know that when I say this, other people think otherwise. I'm talking about the interests of the African people in this country. Let me also take this opportunity to emphasize that government, that as government, we reject land grabs and or unlawful occupation of land. Don't agree. That's not the way to address matters. That could lead to further misery. The land question must be resolved within the ambit of the Constitution and the law. It's an instrument that we must utilize. That's why the necessity to have one strong firm, legal firm. The governing party, the ANC, will discuss this critical matter at the coming policy conference next month. You need to make a contribution to that discussion as traditional leaders. That is why it has given out its conference documents. Find the place where you can make a meaningful contribution. Esteemed delegates, we trust that this Indaba will also consider the wealth underneath our land. Our people must benefit from the minerals extracted from the belly of the earth in their country. We cannot be one of Africa's largest economies, yet our people remain poor, while our country is rich in minerals. It can't be, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Someone will say there's something wrong with us. Some communities already benefit from being enriched with minerals. Lessons can be gleaned from those projects. For an example, in the Northwest, which indicates that it can be done. Esteemed delegates, I believe that one of the commissions of this Indaba will be considering the provisions of the Constitution with regard to the powers and functions of Amakosi. This matter was discussed adequately during the time of the coalition of traditional leaders. We engaged on the matter at cabinet level. This matter has been raised not once, but a number of times by umntwana okaPhindangene, umntwana inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And my response has always been the same, that cabinet did not accept our proposal, which we made in a subcommittee, cabinet subcommittee, where we both served with umntwana at that time, a few years ago. In other words, there is a matter that was discussed about powers and functions. There was a proposal made which, when it was sent to the cabinet did not accept. This is an opportunity, perhaps, to look at that proposal once again as you meet here. At times, when umntwana talks about it, other people forget. I think you need to familiarize yourself about it. What was this proposal? Because it was thought out, it was discussed. And part of the reason that umntwana raises all the time, because he felt this could help us very much to streamline the functions, etc., of the traditional leaders. So try to look at it. I'm not saying take it as it is or whatever, but it will help to show you what progress was made in discussing these very specific issues. Very important. Without preempting the discussions, I also trust that the Indaba will reflect strongly on the question of whether or not traditional leaders should get directly involved in the development programs of councils as part of their responsibilities. It needs discussion. And when we discuss these matters, amaphaphu phansi, let us not fight. Once we are excited, it's difficult to follow logic. Ifuna siyixoxe nje kahle. Ribuye hanhle kayona. Difumane ikhambi. Elizosiza, not us as individuals, but our nation. This terrain may be cumbersome for our traditional leaders, as it will make them operational and involved in the implementation of programs, while they serve better if they rise above any squabbles that come with service delivery issues. So we need to find a way how to balance the authority and oversight and everything without making yourselves targets. You can imagine, so kuthiwa abantu bayamasha zonke insuku bamashela amakhosi but demand service delivery. Ubani ozokhuza? These things need to be looked at very carefully. But akulungile uma bemashela induna. Noma bemashela usibanibano ummeli wenkosi. Because uma behlulana kuzoze inkosi la unkosi sinakho. Kodwa na inkosi mayiphambili kakhulu. But hey iphi nenhlonipho izophela mos. So look at it carefully. Because one of the elements which is important is respect. Once the respect is gone, then you have a problem in any society. There must be somebody that if people are quarreling, they rely on to judge and make decisions. Now, if that person is part of the hairy belly, who will judge if people then are quarreling? Who is understood to have the knowledge, the authority? So we need to protect authority at a particular level. That's why amakhosi ayenamabutho kuwona thumela amabutho awolwizimpi ayelwa nje lawa nesibindi, kodwa in the majority of cases kuhamba amabutho neinduna inkosi isale. Angisho ukuthi asibuyele empini, yadlula leyo nto, asaziliwe izimpi manje kuyakhulunywa. But the critical point really is you need to discuss this issue. How do we marry these activities at the level of local government, taking into consideration all the elements of life? It's very important. The best model of cooperation or working together between the elected and hereditary leadership must be found. And I trust this Indaba will deliberate and emerge with solutions in this regard. Very important. If I'm elected as a councillor, I'm just there for 5 years. My lifespan is very definite, unless I'm lucky to be re-elected. So I depend on the elections. But if I'm a traditional leader, I'm born, I'm here until my last day. How do you differentiate these two? Can they be the same? These are matters I think we need to look at very seriously. because, as I said earlier, we are trying to refine our system to deal with the shortcomings, to make it workable and effective. It must not be a bone of contention. It must not trigger conflict. So we need to consider these matters quite carefully. We shouldn't correct the other by undermining the other. Esteemed guests and delegates, this Indaba takes place during Africa Month, which reminds us of the role of traditional leaders in strengthening relations with the continent. I urge the National House of Traditional Leaders to pick up where they left off with the establishment of the SADC House of Traditional Leaders and the Continental House of Traditional Leaders. The cooperation of our traditional leaders with their counterparts is critical to building a cohesive SADC region and ultimately the continent. It is going to be the role you play that will place you in a particular position. Because we talk about African culture, African everything, African way of solving African problems. And the tradition or the tradition system in the continent exists and it is there. What role must it play? I think it should worry your minds. Work it out. We have a democracy which we believe is a good democracy. And I can tell you, people in the continent look to South Africa. I paid a state visit recently to Tanzania. And one of the former presidents who asked to see me for about 5 minutes, he spent more than 15 minutes, was decrying what they see in the TV in Parliament in South Africa. He was saying, hey, and this was President Mkapa. Those who know him, they can ask him. What are you doing? His major point was, this is un-African, that there is no respect which is being displayed in TVs. What are you doing? This tells you how Africa is one and how anything that happens to their brothers affects them. And they are looking forward to South Africa to help them in the system. For an example, how is the system of traditional leadership working within the kind of democracy that you have and the constitution? You ought to therefore achieve success in outlining how it's going to work and how in practice it is working. And therefore, the question of the regional house of traditional leaders is important to help Africa move forward. At a political level, we have 5 economic regions in the continent. They've been working differently. In order to grow the economy in Africa, we've taken a decision at the AU that we need to integrate these regions. We need to make it easy in the continent to interact and do intertrade. Because we have a lot. We might trade among ourselves need very little from outside the continent. What can we do? 3 of those regions have come together, and the GDP of those has grown very huge. We are finalizing negotiations with the last 2 to have one African economic region rather than different ones. And that brings strength to the African continent economy. Now, it is important that as we do that, the traditional leaders also are able to interact and understand things that are happening in other places. How do they play a role? Because they are found, traditional leaders, throughout the continent. By the way, what today you see as criminality, everything, lack of respect, you may play a very important role to restore the dignity and the pride that we need to have as the African citizens of the African continent. What contribution can you make? Compatriots, traditional leaders must help us in instilling unity, social cohesion, and nation building. You have a role to play, very clear role. It is also important that we emphasize our value systems, which are informed by our rich customs and traditions such as Ubuntu. Here, your role becomes even more clearer. What you need to do. These are matters you need to talk about. For an example, with what is happening, men killing women, raping children, killing them, is something absolutely out of our traditions and values. What contribution can you make to fight this, to say in my area this will never happen? If you believe that there is something that prevents you to play that role, either in the law or whatever, let us interact. Bring back the system. There was a time, and I'm sure many traditional leaders will know this, where you had Iphoyisa lenkosi, who just carried a spear, was the only person with the right to carry the spear. He will arrest you and you will never run away. Take you to the police station, and you can't run away because you respected the law and the authority. How could we bring that back? I'm saying you can discuss these matters. There is a role that the traditional leaders must help to cure our nation. Our country has been engulfed by horrific violence against women and children, which goes against Ubuntu and the respect of human life, dignity, and human rights. Government has declared all crimes against women and children as priority crimes. Women and children have a right to freedom of movement and security in the country and must not live in fear. What contribution the traditional system can do to enhance what government is doing? Maybe the government may fall short of one thing or the other. What advice can you give so that this particular point that the government has made and decision to be active in saving the lives and making them secured, what is it that we can do to work together with the government? We appeal to our traditional leaders to prioritize the fight against crimes against women and children and crime in general, and to work with communities and the police to make our communities safer. Another matter that our traditional leaders need to grapple with further is that of the serious problem of racism which still exists in our country. We have since 1994 worked hard to build a non-racial society, and this program continues. We want to see unity, respect, and tolerance amongst all our people, black and white. All South Africans must be treated with dignity and respect, be they farm workers, factory workers, domestic workers, or professionals. Nobody should be subjected to the dehumanization of racism. Let us expose racism and promote awareness of behavior that constitutes racism, especially in rural areas where there is less media attention, which may result in people suffering in silence. In this fight against racism, government, through the Department of Justice, is finalizing the National Action Plan Against Racism and Related Intolerances. This plan will give further clarity and guidance to government and to the broader South African society on the fight against racism and related intolerances. We have also published the provision of combating of hate crimes and hate speech bill, which will criminalize several forms of discrimination, including racism. Ladies and gentlemen, government is aware that the institution of traditional leadership will not be able to successfully implement all the programs without proper support. The incoming traditional councils and houses of traditional leaders will use the resolutions of this Indaba to develop their plan for the next 5 years. The National House of Traditional Leaders and the Department of Traditional Affairs will oversee the implementation of the resolutions of this Indaba. The Department of Traditional Affairs will work with provinces and municipalities with regards to finding support for the institution within the constitution, within the constrained funding environment. Chairperson and esteemed delegates, we are pleased with the approach you have taken as traditional leaders to discuss a variety of serious issues. If these matters are not discussed, the problem is that they continue to be an irritation or cause serious problems. At times, people might have very little to disagree, but because they are not talking, they think they will never agree. So discussing matters is the best. This inaugural Indaba is an important development and will go a long way towards outlining the program of action for the coming term of office. It is important, as I said at the beginning, that let us take this interaction, this gathering, as an important step for us to address some of the challenges that we have not so far succeeded to discuss. The Minister of Kokta is one of the persons who is hands-on. I think take advantage of that. He's here. He's a man who wants to deliver. Engage him. He thrives on engagement. So this could be the moment to resolve many outstanding issues. I'm very happy because he informed me that there are ministers who are going to be here and participate in this engagement, who are particularly handling portfolios that touch on the traditional leaders. The Minister of Small Business Development, Umama Uzulu, Ula. They will have time to interact with you. What is it that can be done in your areas with regard to the small business? We are talking about the rural economy. Take advantage of that. What can be done in your areas? That is going to be a very important interaction. The Minister of Tourism is here, Umama Xhasa. Take advantage of that. There is a lot of tourism in your areas. You can actually initiate economic activities in your areas. There are others who are going to be here at a national level. I think today there will be 4, all in all. But there are also MECs of matters that relate to you. This is a moment that you can share, not only on formal kind of thing, even as you walk around. Because at times, serious matters are discussed when you are not straight-jacketed into a formal kind of program. When we are free, igazi lehlile. Ukuba nibadala ngabe ngikhuluma okunye manje nibadala akuzona nizona izingane. Anizona izingane. Akufuneke nenze into ezenziwa izingane. It is absolutely important that we create interaction. It's very important for our country, for our generations to come, to solve the problems. Government is ready to interact. I know you are also ready. Just deal with everything. There are matters that need all of you to meet and discuss, and I'm happy the minister mentioned them to me. How to standardize things, how to harmonize systems. Because apartheid had made them different. That was their old trick, to make others feel better than others. How do we deal with those matters? So it is absolutely important. I'm happy that there is this meeting. And this meeting is a hope to me that we are going to begin to grapple with the matters seriously. We must go back where we took life as very important, where we loved our old people. We did not dump them away from our places. They were a source of knowledge for our children. Where there were no children in the streets, no street children. Streets do not give birth to children. No children that belong to the streets. Where there were no orphans who felt have got no one, because children were loved. We actually had systems that protected the child. And today, some of them could be looked differently, but we had our own system. Children were not exposed to serious matters. Children never attended funerals. They never saw a dead person until you were very big, because you did not want to abuse the small mind. Not this type of adults now. When they see a child, they see somebody to abuse, either sexually or otherwise. At times you are born, your mother dies, perhaps your parents. You grow up not even knowing that, because you grew up in the hands of a warm homestead and family. You'll be told when you grow up that in fact this is your situation. That kind of love, you can do it, particularly in the villages, because you have the opportunity to do so. Make a contribution. So let us find more things to do to help ourselves, rather than finding more things to do to fight among ourselves. Let us do the opposite. I am very confident that this process under this minister will bear fruit as we go forward. We wish you successful and fruitful deliberations in this gathering. It is now my honor and pleasure to declare the Indaba of indigenous and traditional leaders officially opened. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable President, for a very thought-provoking speech. Ngesikhethu abantu nabangibonako bathi babethu. And whether umncane or umdala. Mongameli, ukhulume njengomntwana nami. You spoke like my son, the son of the soil, a person that lives with the institution, that lives the institution, that lives the culture, an African child. I think all the issues that you've raised